Imagine standing in the shadow of a giant, your heart racing as you look up at a warrior twice your size, knowing that one wrong move could mean the end. Yet, instead of retreating, you step forward, not in your own strength but in the confidence that God is with you. This is the kind of courage that defined Elhanan, a lesser-known figure in the Bible who faced down one of the giants that threatened Israel's future. Though his name might not be as famous as David's, Elhanan's story is just as powerful, reminding us that God often works through those who are willing to act in faith, even when no one is watching. In this video, we'll explore the story of Elhanan, the man who helped defeat Goliath's kin and secured a crucial victory for Israel. We'll dive into the details of his battle, the mysteries surrounding his connection to Goliath, and the lessons his life teaches us about faith, courage, and humility. Get ready to uncover the story of a hero who may have been overlooked, but whose actions had a lasting impact on Israel's history. Elhanan is a name that doesn't come up often in biblical studies, yet his role is crucial. He's a figure hidden in the shadows of more prominent biblical characters, but his story is one of strength and courage. In 2 Samuel 21 verse 19, we encounter Elhanan as the man who helped defeat a giant. But who exactly was he, and why is his story so mysterious? Many scholars have debated his connection to Goliath, and it leaves readers with more questions than answers. This mystery itself adds an element of intrigue to his tale. One of the main reasons Elhanan remains a mystery is the brief mention he receives in the Bible. The text simply states that he killed Goliath, though this is a point of contention with the more famous story of David and Goliath. Did Elhanan slay a different giant, or was there a textual mix-up? These questions often push him to the margins of biblical history, but they also invite curiosity. There's something compelling about a character with such an enigmatic role in Scripture. Despite the limited details, Elhanan's story is no less significant. His actions on the battlefield helped shape Israel's future. He wasn't just a bystander in the grand narrative. He played an essential role. When you dig deeper into the biblical context, you realize that his courage and willingness to step into danger set him apart. But how did he find himself facing a giant? What was his motivation? These questions offer a glimpse into the kind of person Elhanan must have been. Interestingly, Elhanan's name itself can provide clues to his character. The name means God has been gracious, which may reflect the divine favor he experienced in his life. Could it be that his bravery was a result of his deep faith in God's grace? While we don't have a detailed biography of Elhanan, we can imagine that his trust in God's provision led him to face overwhelming odds with confidence. This notion of faith intertwined with courage is a theme we see throughout the Bible. Elhanan's legacy may be overshadowed by other biblical heroes, but his story still holds valuable lessons. In many ways, Elhanan represents those who do great things without recognition. He reminds us that you don't need a grand title or fame to make an impact. Sometimes, the greatest acts of faith and courage come from those who are willing to step up in the moment without needing acknowledgement. Elhanan's brief yet powerful story reflects this truth. As we continue to explore the story of Elhanan, one thing is clear. His mysterious role in defeating a giant invites us to reflect on our own faith. Can we trust in God's grace even when we face overwhelming challenges? Elhanan's life challenges us to act with courage, even when we don't have all the answers. When most people think of Goliath, they immediately think of David, the young shepherd boy who famously took down the giant with a sling and a stone. But in 2 Samuel 21 verse 19, the Bible mentions that Elhanan, the son of Jehoiakim, also killed a giant named Goliath. This verse has sparked debates among biblical scholars for centuries. Could there have been two giants named Goliath? Or is this simply a case of different accounts of the same event? Many theologians suggest that Elhanan may have killed another giant from Gath, a city known for producing mighty warriors. Some even believe that this second Goliath could have been a relative of the giant David killed. This theory makes sense considering that the Philistines were a formidable enemy and had many warriors. If this is the case, then Elhanan deserves to be recognized as a hero, just like David. His bravery on the battlefield helped secure victories for Israel in their ongoing conflicts with the Philistines. The Bible doesn't give us many details about Elhanan's battle with Goliath, but we can imagine the scene. Facing a towering warrior like Goliath would have been terrifying for anyone. Yet, Elhanan stepped up to the challenge, trusting in God and his own skill as a warrior. In a way, Elhanan's story echoes David's, but without the fanfare. His courage didn't lead to fame, but his actions were just as significant in the eyes of God. The comparison between David and Elhanan also brings up an interesting point. Not all heroes get the same recognition. While David's victory over Goliath became legendary, Elhanan's triumph has remained relatively obscure. This doesn't make his accomplishment any less important, though. It serves as a reminder that some of the most significant contributions in life are made quietly, without the need for praise or recognition. Elhanan's quiet heroism is a testament to the kind of courage that doesn't seek glory but is motivated by duty and faith. Interestingly, this discrepancy in recognition also mirrors real life. There are countless people who work tirelessly behind the scenes, doing important work that often goes unnoticed. Elhanan's story can inspire us to appreciate those individuals who don't seek the spotlight but whose actions make a real difference. In many ways, Elhanan embodies the unsung hero, the one who fights the good fight, even if no one is there to witness it. As we delve deeper into Elhanan's life, we'll begin to see how his actions, though not as widely known as David's, had a profound impact on the history of Israel. His bravery in battle and his willingness to face the impossible make him a key figure in the ongoing struggle against the Philistines. It's a story that deserves to be told and remembered. If you're enjoying this story so far, comment courage in the comments below. There's a powerful lesson about faith coming up next that you won't want to miss. Elhanan's defining moment came on the battlefield, facing a giant that threatened the safety of Israel. The details of this battle are sparse in the Bible, but what we do know is that Elhanan's courage and skill were unmatched. Just like David's battle against Goliath, this encounter wasn't just about physical strength. It was a spiritual battle as well. Elhanan wasn't just fighting a giant. He was standing against the enemies of God's people, trusting in the Lord to deliver victory. The tension of the battle would have been palpable. Imagine the scene. Elhanan, likely with a small group of warriors, stands before the giant, his heart pounding. The Philistine army is watching, waiting for their champion to crush the Israelites. Yet Elhanan, despite the odds, steps forward. Perhaps he remembered the stories of David's victory and found strength in knowing that God had delivered Israel before. Elhanan's trust in God's power must have been unwavering, as he faced a warrior whose very presence struck fear into the hearts of many. What makes Elhanan's story so compelling is that it shows us that God can use anyone to achieve great things. You don't have to be the most famous, the most skilled, or the most well-known to make an impact. Elhanan's battle reminds us that sometimes God calls us to stand in moments of great challenge, even when no one is watching or when our story won't be told for generations. His victory wasn't about gaining personal glory. It was about protecting his people and fulfilling his role in God's larger plan. This battle wasn't just a physical confrontation. It was also a test of faith. Elhanan's willingness to fight against a giant, knowing that victory wasn't guaranteed, speaks volumes about his character. Like many of the great figures in the Bible, Elhanan displayed a faith that went beyond mere words. His actions demonstrated a deep trust in God's ability to deliver him, no matter the odds. This is the kind of faith that changes lives, both for the one who possesses it and for those around them. After the battle, Elhanan would have returned to his people as a quiet hero. There were no songs sung about him, no parades in his honor. But that didn't matter to Elhanan. His focus wasn't on personal recognition. It was on doing what was right and serving God's purpose. In this way, Elhanan becomes an example for us all. His story challenges us to ask ourselves, are we willing to step up, even when no one is watching? Do we have the courage to fight the battles God calls us to, even if we won't receive recognition? As we reflect on this battle, we see that Elhanan's legacy is more than just about a single victory. It's about faith, courage, and obedience. His story reminds us that God often works through those who are willing to step forward in faith, even when the odds seem impossible. In this, Elhanan's legacy is one that can inspire us to trust in God's plan for our own lives. Elhanan's role in David's reign is a fascinating one. although it often gets overshadowed by more prominent figures in David's inner circle. As king, David surrounded himself with mighty warriors and loyal servants who helped establish Israel's dominance. Elhanan was part of this elite group, sometimes referred to as David's mighty men. These were not just soldiers, they were trusted allies, men of great skill and unwavering loyalty. Elhanan's inclusion in this group tells us a lot about his character and his significance during David's reign. David's reign was marked by numerous battles, as Israel was constantly at war with its enemies. Elhanan, like many of David's warriors, would have been involved in several of these campaigns. His victory over Goliath's kin was just one of many encounters that contributed to Israel's military success. Elhanan's role wasn't just to fight, but to protect the kingdom and ensure that God's people remained safe. He was a critical part of the larger mission that David, under God's guidance, was leading. One of the reasons Elhanan stands out is because of his willingness to serve without seeking the spotlight. In a kingdom that included giants like David and Joab, it would have been easy for someone like Elhanan to fade into the background. Yet, despite the lack of recognition, Elhanan played a crucial role. His loyalty to David wasn't about gaining personal glory. It was about fulfilling his duty to God and his king. This speaks to the quiet strength of Elhanan's character, a man who didn't need the spotlight to make a difference. Elhanan's role also shows us the importance of community in fulfilling God's plans. David couldn't have succeeded without the support of men like Elhanan. Each victory, each moment of peace, was the result of a collective effort. Elhanan's story reminds us that we are all part of something bigger than ourselves. Sometimes we are called to be the leaders, and other times we are called to support those who lead. Both roles are vital in advancing God's kingdom. The Bible doesn't give us all the details about Elhanan's relationship with David, but we can imagine that it was built on mutual respect. David was known for recognizing the talents and strengths of those around him, and it's likely that Elhanan's bravery on the battlefield earned him a place of honor in David's court. While Elhanan may not have been as well known as Joab or Abishai, his contribution was no less significant. As we reflect on Elhanan's role in David's reign, it's important to see how God uses people in different ways. Some, like David, are called to lead from the front, while others, like Elhanan, support that leadership with courage and faithfulness. Both roles are essential to the success of God's mission, and both are equally valuable in the eyes of the Lord. Elhanan's quiet service is a powerful reminder that we don't need to be in the spotlight to make a significant impact in the kingdom of God. Elhanan's story often gets lost in the grand narrative of King David's life. David's legendary status as a warrior, poet, and king naturally draws attention, and this can make it easy to overlook the contributions of those around him, like Elhanan. But was Elhanan truly overshadowed by David, or was his role equally important in its own way? This is a question worth exploring, as it brings to light the broader theme of leadership and support. In many ways, Elhanan's role complements David's. While David was the public face of Israel's military success, it was men like Elhanan who made that success possible. Without warriors like Elhanan, David wouldn't have been able to secure the victories that defined his reign. This dynamic between leader and supporter shows that sometimes the greatest achievements are the result of teamwork, where each person plays a unique part. Elhanan's story, though less celebrated, is integral to the larger narrative of Israel's triumph over its enemies. One of the reasons Elhanan may have been overshadowed is because his victory over Goliath's kin didn't carry the same dramatic weight as David's slaying of Goliath. David's battle against Goliath was a defining moment in Israel's history, symbolizing the underdog triumphing against overwhelming odds. Elhanan's victory, though impressive, didn't have the same national significance. Yet, this doesn't mean Elhanan's act was any less courageous or important. It serves as a reminder that not every hero's story needs to be a grand spectacle to matter. The relationship between David and Elhanan also highlights an important aspect of leadership, recognizing and valuing the contributions of others. David may have been the king, but he relied heavily on the skills and loyalty of his warriors. In turn, Elhanan's willingness to serve without seeking recognition speaks to his humility and dedication. He didn't need to be in the spotlight to know that his work was valuable. This teaches us that true leadership is about recognizing the collective effort, not just individual accomplishments. In today's world, it's easy to feel overshadowed by others, especially when we compare ourselves to those who seem to have more influence or recognition. Elhanan's story challenges us to rethink this mindset. Just because someone isn't in the spotlight doesn't mean their work isn't important. Often, it's the quiet, faithful work behind the scenes that makes the biggest difference. Elhanan's life reminds us that God values each person's contribution, whether it's seen by many or only by a few. As we reflect on whether Elhanan was overshadowed by David, we can see that the two men played different but equally important roles in Israel's history. David may have been the figurehead, but Elhanan's courage and faithfulness were just as vital to the nation's success. In God's eyes, both men were equally valuable, and both served a purpose in advancing his kingdom. Though the Bible doesn't provide extensive details about Elhanan's family and background, what we do know is significant. Elhanan was the son of Jehoiarib, and his heritage ties him to the tribe of Judah, the same tribe as King David. Being from Judah placed Elhanan in a position of importance, as this tribe was known for producing leaders and warriors. The connection to such a prominent tribe helps explain Elhanan's courage and ability to step up when the time came. Family and heritage were incredibly important in biblical times, often determining a person's role in society. Elhanan's family background likely gave him access to training and preparation for the life of a warrior. Like many men in Judah, he would have been raised with stories of God's deliverance and the bravery of the men of Israel. This upbringing would have instilled in him a strong sense of duty and a desire to protect his people. Knowing this, it's not surprising that Elhanan was willing to face giants in battle. Elhanan's connection to Judah also ties him to a lineage of faith. The tribe of Judah was prophesied to be the tribe from which the Messiah would come, giving it a special significance in the story of Israel. While Elhanan's story may not directly connect to this prophecy, his role as a warrior from Judah places him within the larger narrative of God's plan for his people. His actions in battle were not just about winning a fight, they were about securing the future of Israel, a future that would eventually lead to the coming of Christ. Understanding Elhanan's family and heritage also gives us insight into the man behind the battle. His bravery wasn't just a momentary act. It was the result of years of preparation, training, and a deep sense of responsibility passed down through generations. Elhanan's story reminds us that we don't act alone. Our families, communities, and heritage shape who we are and how we respond to the challenges we face. In many ways, Elhanan's victory was not just his own, but a reflection of the legacy of courage and faith that he inherited. While the Bible doesn't give us much information about Elhanan's personal life or descendants, his story suggests that he came from a family that valued strength, loyalty, and faithfulness. His willingness to step into danger for the sake of his people reflects the values that were likely instilled in him from a young age. His heritage, both as a warrior and as a man of faith, played a crucial role in shaping the man he became. As we consider Elhanan's family and heritage, we are reminded that our own backgrounds influence the choices we make. Just as Elhanan drew strength from his tribe and family, we, too, are shaped by the people and history that surround us. Elhanan's story challenges us to consider how our own heritage can inspire us to act with courage and faith in our own lives. One of the most intriguing aspects of Elhanan's story is the apparent contradiction between the account of David's defeat of Goliath and the mention of Elhanan killing a giant named Goliath in 2 Samuel 21 verse 19. For centuries, scholars have debated how to reconcile these two accounts. Was there more than one giant named Goliath? Or is this a case of a textual variation? Regardless of the answer, this comparison opens up an interesting conversation about the nature of biblical narrative and the significance of each event. In the more famous story, David's encounter with Goliath is one of the most well-known tales in all of Scripture. It's a story of an underdog defeating a seemingly unbeatable foe with nothing more than a sling and a stone. David's victory over Goliath is seen as a defining moment for Israel, marking David as God's chosen leader. This story is not just about a battle. It's about faith, trust in God, and the power of the unlikely hero. Elhanan's encounter with a giant, on the other hand, is mentioned almost in passing. There are no elaborate details about the battle, no grand speeches of defiance like the one David made. Elhanan's story is simpler, less dramatic, but equally significant. If this Goliath was indeed a different giant from the one David killed, then Elhanan's victory would have been just as important in protecting Israel. The lack of fanfare surrounding Elhanan's battle doesn't diminish its value. It simply shows that not every victory needs to be accompanied by applause. Comparing these two accounts raises an interesting question. Why does David's story get so much more attention than Elhanan's? One possible reason is the symbolism in David's battle. David's victory over Goliath represents the triumph of faith over fear, the power of God working through the weak to overcome the strong. Elhanan's battle, while still a remarkable feat, doesn't carry the same symbolic weight. It's more of a straightforward military encounter, and as such, it doesn't capture the imagination in quite the same way. That being said, Elhanan's victory is no less valuable in the eyes of God. Both David and Elhanan fought against overwhelming odds, and both were victorious because of their faith and courage. The comparison between these two stories reminds us that God works through all kinds of people and in all kinds of situations. Sometimes, He uses the dramatic and the miraculous to inspire His people, as in David's case. Other times, He works quietly and without much attention, as in Elhanan's story. Another way to look at this comparison is through the lens of humility. While David's victory brought him fame and recognition, Elhanan's battle was more about service than glory. Elhanan didn't need his name to be remembered in the same way David's was. He was content to serve God and protect his people, even if his story remained largely in the shadows. This humility is a powerful lesson for us today, reminding us that the value of our actions isn't measured by how much attention they receive, but by the heart with which we serve. As we compare the accounts of Elhanan and Goliath, it's clear that both men played vital roles in securing Israel's future. Whether their stories are well-known or lesser-known, each act of courage contributed to the larger plan that God was unfolding for His people. Elhanan may not be a household name in the Bible, but his contribution to Israel's military victories was significant. His bravery in slaying a giant helped secure a key victory for Israel in their ongoing battles with the Philistines. In a time when Israel's survival often depended on the outcome of individual encounters with powerful enemies, warriors like Elhanan were essential to the nation's success. His actions not only impacted the immediate battle, but also played a role in shaping Israel's future. The Philistines were one of Israel's most persistent enemies, and their warriors were known for their strength and skill in battle. Giants like Goliath and his kin represented the most formidable threats that Israel faced. By defeating one of these giants, Elhanan helped weaken the Philistines' military strength, giving Israel a strategic advantage in their ongoing conflict. Each victory over the Philistines brought Israel one step closer to peace and stability, and Elhanan's role in this cannot be overstated. Elhanan's impact went beyond just the physical victory on the battlefield. His courage and faith in God would have inspired others around him. In a time when fear could easily paralyze a nation, seeing one of their own step up to face a giant would have given the Israelites hope and renewed their confidence. Elhanan's victory was a reminder that with God's help, even the most intimidating enemies could be defeated. This message of faith in the face of overwhelming odds would have resonated deeply with the people of Israel. The victories in which Elhanan played a role also contributed to the larger mission that King David was pursuing, establishing Israel as a powerful and secure nation. Each battle won under David's reign, whether by David himself or by his warriors like Elhanan, solidified Israel's position in the region. Elhanan's willingness to risk his life for the sake of his people shows the kind of commitment that was necessary to achieve these goals. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for the future of Israel. In many ways, Elhanan's impact can be compared to that of other unsung heroes throughout history. While their names may not always be remembered, their actions have a lasting effect on the course of events. Elhanan's story reminds us that sometimes the most significant contributions come from those who are not seeking glory but are simply doing what is right. His role in Israel's victories may not be as well known as others, but it was just as vital to the nation's success. As we reflect on Elhanan's impact, we see that his story is one of quiet strength and unwavering faith. His contribution to Israel's victories is a testament to the power of individuals who are willing to step up when needed, even if their actions go unnoticed by the world. Elhanan's legacy is one of courage, faith, and a commitment to something greater than himself. His story encourages us to consider the impact we can have, even in moments when no one is watching. At first glance, Elhanan's story might seem distant and disconnected from modern life, but when we dig deeper, we find that the lessons from his life are just as relevant today as they were in ancient times. Elhanan's courage, humility, and faith in God's plan provide timeless examples of how we can face our own challenges and uncertainties in life. His story encourages us to look beyond the surface and see how God can use anyone, regardless of their fame or recognition, to accomplish great things. In today's fast-paced world, where recognition and success are often measured by how many people notice our achievements, Elhanan's story serves as a reminder that true impact doesn't always come with fanfare. His quiet strength and willingness to serve without seeking the spotlight reflect a powerful truth. You don't need to be famous to make a difference. This is especially relevant in a time when social media and public attention often dominate our sense of self-worth. Elhanan reminds us that faithfulness in our daily tasks is what truly matters. One of the key takeaways from Elhanan's life is the importance of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Like Elhanan, we all face giants in our lives. Whether they are challenges at work, struggles in relationships, or personal fears and doubts, Elhanan's willingness to confront a giant shows us that, with God's help, we can overcome even the most daunting obstacles. His story challenges us to ask ourselves, what giants am I facing, and how can I rely on God to help me defeat them? Elhanan's relevance today also lies in his faithfulness to the larger mission. He wasn't fighting just for himself. He was fighting for his people and his nation. Similarly, we are often called to play a part in something bigger than ourselves. Whether it's serving our community, supporting our families, or contributing to causes that make the world a better place, Elhanan's story reminds us that our actions, no matter how small they seem, can have a lasting impact. We, too, are part of a larger story that God is writing. Another way Elhanan's story resonates with us today is through the idea of perseverance. His role in the Bible may be small, but it required perseverance, faith, and dedication. In a world where we are often tempted to give up when things get tough, Elhanan's example encourages us to keep going, even when we don't see immediate results. His faith in God's plan was unwavering, and that same faith is available to us today as we navigate our own paths. Ultimately, Elhanan's story is about trusting God's timing and plan. He didn't seek out fame or recognition, but his faithfulness in the role God gave him made a difference. In our own lives, we may not always see how our actions fit into the bigger picture, but like Elhanan, we can trust that God is working through us in ways we may not fully understand. His life reminds us to remain faithful, to act with courage, and to trust that God will use our efforts for a greater purpose. Elhanan's story, though brief in the Bible, teaches us profound lessons about faith and courage that we can apply to our own lives. At the heart of Elhanan's actions is a deep trust in God's plan. He didn't have the benefit of fame or recognition, but his faith in God gave him the courage to face a giant in battle, knowing that his strength alone wasn't enough. This reliance on God, rather than personal power, is a key takeaway from Elhanan's life. One of the most important lessons we can learn from Elhanan is that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to act in spite of it. Like Elhanan, we all face moments in life where we feel inadequate or overwhelmed by the challenges before us. Whether it's a personal struggle, a difficult decision, or a situation that feels out of our control, Elhanan's story shows us that courage is about trusting in God's strength to carry us through, even when we feel weak. Faith plays a central role in Elhanan's story as well. His victory wasn't just a result of his skill as a warrior, but of his faith in God's ability to deliver him from danger. Elhanan knew that his strength alone wasn't enough to defeat a giant, but he believed that with God's help, anything was possible. This faith is what sets him apart, and it's a reminder to us that, no matter how big our problems seem, God is always bigger. Elhanan also teaches us the value of humility in serving God's purpose. While others like David received more recognition for their victories, Elhanan was content to play his part, knowing that his actions were part of a larger plan. In today's world, where personal achievement is often celebrated, it's easy to forget that sometimes the most important work is done quietly, without applause. Elhanan's humility reminds us that true success isn't measured by fame, but by our faithfulness in fulfilling the roles God has given us. Another important lesson from Elhanan's story is perseverance. The battles we face in life often require more than just a single act of bravery. They demand ongoing faith, dedication, and a refusal to give up, even when the odds seem stacked against us. Elhanan's victory wasn't a one-time event. It was part of a larger struggle that required continued effort and trust in God. His story encourages us to keep fighting the good fight, trusting that God is with us every step of the way. Finally, Elhanan's life reminds us that every role in God's plan is important, no matter how small it may seem. Whether we're called to lead or to support others in their leadership, each of us has a unique part to play in the story God is writing. Elhanan's courage, faith, and humility serve as an example for all of us to follow. In a world that often values recognition above all else, Elhanan's story teaches us that true greatness comes from faithfully serving God, regardless of whether our actions are seen or celebrated by others. Elhanan's story may be brief, but its impact is timeless. Through his life, we see the power of faith, the importance of courage, and the value of serving without seeking recognition. Elhanan's quiet heroism reminds us that we don't need the spotlight to make a difference. In God's kingdom, every act of faith and service, no matter how small or unnoticed, is significant. Like Elhanan, we are called to trust in God's strength, to face the giants in our lives with courage, and to fulfill the roles God has given us with humility and perseverance. As you reflect on Elhanan's story, consider the giants you're facing today. Are you relying on God's strength to overcome them? And more importantly, are you willing to step forward in faith, even if no one else sees your actions? Let Elhanan's life inspire you to trust in God's plan, knowing that every act of faithfulness counts in His eyes. Before we go, let's take a moment to pray. Lord, thank you for the example of Elhanan and his unwavering faith. Help us to face the challenges in our lives with the same courage and trust in your strength. May we serve you with humility and dedication, knowing that every action in your service is important. Bless us with the wisdom to follow your will and the courage to act in faith. In Jesus' name, amen. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. And let me know in the comments, what did Elhanan's story teach you about faith and courage? I'd love to hear your thoughts.